Whispers in the Red. It started with a whisper. At first, Thomas Wren thought it was just the wind, or maybe the rustling of old pipes in his apartment. A tired brain playing tricks after too many sleepless nights. But the whisper didn't fade. It grew. It began to shape itself into words, sharp, cruel, and hungry. Cut him. Watch the way he bleeds. See the truth beneath the skin. Thomas had never been violent. Quiet, yes. Withdrawn, sure. The kind of man you'd forget in a crowded room. 32 years old, balding early, working nights at a hospital records office where no one ever looked him in the eye. He was invisible. Until the voices came. At first, he ignored them. Thought it was stress, overwork, caffeine withdrawal. But then he started losing time. Minutes at first. Then hours. Once, he woke up in the bathtub fully clothed, water still running, fingernails caked with dirt. Another time, he came to in the hallway of his building, clutching a rusty box cutter. And then, one night, he remembered. It was a Thursday. Rain battered the city, and the wind howled like a wounded animal. Thomas sat at his desk, organizing patient files, when a wave of nausea hit him. He doubled over, gasping. His vision swam. And the voice, one he now knew by name, Marlowe, spoke louder than ever. He's lying! The one in room 7. He touched children. You know what to do. He tried to resist. He bit his tongue until it bled, clenched his fists until his nails broke skin. But when he blinked, he was no longer in the records room. He stood in the hospital stairwell, red emergency lights spinning slowly. In his hand, a pair of surgical scissors. At his feet, a nurse, eyes wide in death, blood pooling like spilled wine. Her ID tag said, "C. Reynolds." He screamed. But it came out a whimper. And then Marlowe whispered again. "Good. Now you're finally listening." The next few weeks blurred. The city mourned the death of the nurse. Police talked of a break-in, a botched robbery. Thomas returned to work. No one suspected him. Why would they? He looked like a frightened rabbit. But now, the voice had friends. They called themselves by names that crawled across his spine like centipedes. Elra, Jacqueline, Miu. Each had their tone, Elra sultry and cold, Jacqueline like a child speaking backwards, Miu barely more than breathing. They filled his days with madness. They told him secrets about strangers, who they were, what they'd done. Some of it true, some maybe not. But they all ended the same. He must bleed. Rip her eyes, she sees too much. Burn the sin. Burn it clean. Thomas tried therapy. He confessed to a doctor that he was hearing things. The doctor smiled, prescribed something. The pills dulled the voices. For a week. Then came the dreams. In them, he walked through a maze of skin-colored walls, warm and pulsing, like the inside of a living body. The ground squelched underfoot. Faces grew from the walls, weeping blood, mouths whispering his name. And always at the center, a mirror. Cracked. Rusted. But when he looked into it, he didn't see himself. He saw them. By the end of October, the murders had become frequent. A homeless man found gutted in an alley. A university professor with his throat torn out. A teenage boy nailed to a cross made of mop handles. Each time Thomas blacked out. Each time he awoke with blood on his hands and a sick, gnawing feeling in his gut. Each time, the voices cheered. He began to collect trophies. A necklace, a tooth, a patch of hair, all kept in a wooden box under his bed. He told himself he didn't want this, that he was being controlled. But part of him, some dark, hollow thing, was beginning to enjoy it. He started drawing things he saw in his dreams: a massive door made of bone, a spiral of screaming mouths, a faceless figure with too many arms. The more he drew, the better he felt. The clearer the voices became, and the more invisible he became to the world. In early November, Thomas got a message. It wasn't written. It wasn't spoken. It was felt. He woke in the middle of the night and walked to his closet. Inside was a small hole behind the coats. Something he'd never noticed before. He reached in and found a key. Old. Cold. Iron. The key smelled of rot and fire. The voices screamed with joy. It's time. The gate, Thomas. The gate waits for blood. You are the hand. You are the harvester. He didn't know what they meant. But that night, he walked to an abandoned factory near the river. Something guided him. Not a path, not a map. A hunger. He unlocked a rusted door and descended into darkness. What he found there, at the bottom of the winding staircase, was a room made of stone, soaked in something sticky and red. The walls were etched with symbols he couldn't read but somehow understood. In the center, a table. Black metal bolted to the floor. Chains dangling from each corner. There was no electricity. But the room was dimly lit. Lit from inside. He heard breathing. And laughter. And 1,000 whispers, all speaking in unison. Welcome home, Thomas. Time to build the altar. Later, he wouldn't remember how he got home. Only that he was barefoot, his clothes soaked, and that he was laughing. The next morning, the news reported another killing. A woman found inside an abandoned church, her hands missing, mouth sewn shut. Police were baffled. The press called it the work of a cult. But Thomas knew better. There was no cult. Only him. And the ones in his head. And they were very real. Part 2: Whispers Beneath the Skin. It all began with silence. A strange, cold silence that filled the house like mercury. Jacob woke up in the middle of the night. Sweat clung to his hair, his shirt stuck to his back, and his heart pounded as if it were trying to escape. He didn't know what was dream and what was real anymore. Sometimes he thought he woke up not in his own bed, but in someone else's room, foreign, abandoned, smelling of death. He wasn't sleeping. He was trembling. And they started talking again. You let her go. You're getting weak, Jacob. We thought you were different. Fix it. Correct your mistake. Cleanse. He clenched his teeth, pressing his palms to his temples. Sometimes he hoped it was just illness. Psychosis. But no. It was something more. These voices knew too much. They whispered names. Pushed him toward doors. Told him where to go and how. They were his teachers. His demons. They were him. The woman's body found in the woods on the edge of town was the third in 2 months. The locals called him the Hunter. The newspapers wrote about a ritualistic psychopath. But they had no idea how close Jacob had walked past them. In the supermarket. At the pharmacy. even in the church gift shop. He smiled, bought water, looked cashiers in the eyes. And no one knew his hands still smelled of bleach and blood. He had become skilled, cautious. But the voices demanded more. You've stopped. Why? Did you like her? Are you doubting us? You must cross the line. The real line. Make them feel pain. We want to hear screams, not silence. He resisted. For several nights he left the house and just walked. Aimlessly. He stood on a bridge, staring into the darkness, thinking, what if? But the voices wouldn't allow it. They struck him from within, scratching at his bones, whispering beneath his skin. He chose the next one. Random? No. The voices knew. The voices pointed to her. Marissa. Young. Kind. A schoolteacher. The type who smiled even when the world was gray. He saw her outside the school, handing gloves to a child. Eyes full of life. And suddenly, a roar inside, not his. Theirs. She smiles too brightly. Fix it. He watched her for a week. Learned her route. Her hours. Her neighbors. Then the evening came. When Marissa entered her apartment, the door closed too quickly behind her. The smell, strange. Gasoline? Dampness? And then, he was there. No mask. His real face. Twisted. Scarred. A smile that wasn't a smile. Who are you? She started. The one who corrects, he replied, his voice carrying too many voices at once. By morning, the police found the apartment empty. No body. No signs of struggle. Only a massive symbol carved into the wall. Ancient looking. Something from a nightmare. Something primal. The voices were pleased. You did it. See how good it feels? You are our vessel. Our hands. Our voice. But that same evening, something strange happened. The voices stopped. All at once. As if someone had shut off a radio inside his brain. Instead of whispers, emptiness. Deaf, terrifying silence. Jacob began to panic. He was uneasy. He waited. Searched. Screamed into the void. Where are you? Talk to me. But silence didn't answer. Only the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to breathe. As if they no longer needed him. That night he woke to a sound. Not inside his head, in the house. Floorboards creaking. Old doors groaning. He stepped into the hallway and saw footprints on the floor. Wet. Droplets. As if someone had stood in the rain, inside. On the wall, words scratched with fingernails. You freed us. But you are the last. He didn't understand. He shook. He called out. And then they returned. But these were not the same voices. You thought you controlled us. But you merely opened the door. Now we are everywhere. In the walls. In people's eyes. In their fear. In their dreams. You are no longer needed. The shadows thickened. The room grew cold. He felt as if the walls were closing in. As if they were alive. He screamed. He begged. He pleaded. But the only response was, "You are the final sacrifice, Jacob. Thank you for letting us in." When neighbors called the police due to the noise, officers found the house empty. No Jacob. No signs of a struggle. Just a single sound, deep inside the walls, as if someone were whispering. Too faint to make out the words. But it was definitely there. Since then, the house has remained sealed. Locals say that strange sounds still echo at night. That names are whispered. That someone sobs. And high on one of the walls, scrawled in dried blood. He thought he heard voices. But in truth, the voices heard him. Thank you for watching, but beware, some stories never truly end.